a new security report has shown that abductions and kidnappings rose significantly across the country in the month of June. According to the report by a private consulting firm, 338 incidents were recorded that resulted in 651 abductions compared to the 265 abductions recorded in the month before, that's May. 765 fatalities were also reported. And the rise in abductions comes amid government's efforts to tackle security challenges in the country.
Indeed. Well, the report indicates a prevalence of incidents that were first observed in April, including an increase in violent activities by non-state actors in the Northeast and North Central. There was also the spate of targeted attacks in the Southeast geopolitical region. Now, the major security trends observed in the month of June includes targets on religious institutions and clerics, violence associated with political events and politicians in the preparations for the 2023 general elections and off-cycle election in Ekiti and Osun states, both in the southwest of the country, as well as social upheaval, mostly triggered by the ongoing university lecturers' strike and criminal activities in southwest Nigeria.
All right, for more on these stories, we're joined by security experts Kabir Adamu and Roy Ohidevie, who is in our Lagos studio. Of course, Kabir Adamu is right here in the studio with us. Good to have both of you gentlemen joining us tonight on Newsnight. Let me start with you, Kabir Adamu. I mean, you have consistently come up with monthly reports of the state of insecurity in Nigeria. Tell us more about, the key issues that came up in your report, your findings.
Thank you, Ngozi. Right. So June, as we all know, serves like three purposes. First off, is a month on its own, from the beginning to the end. Secondly, it represents the end of the second quarter of the year. And then at the same time, it also represents the first half of the year. So that's what we did in that report. We considered developments within the month of June, compared it with May, and just like you provided in those figures, we saw a reduction in the number of incidents, we saw a reduction in the fatalities, but an increase, unfortunately, in kidnap for ransom. In fact, a 145% increase in abduction. Now, for the month of the second quarter of the year, we also compared it with the first year, and there was a reduction in almost all these three components: incidents, fatalities, and kidnapping. Now, for the first half of the year, January to June, end of June, what we saw, which was really shocking, was the prevalence of this incident. So about 6,000 persons have died for that period, and about 3,000 people have been abducted for that period. 80% of those persons, incidents and fatalities and abduction occurred in the northern half of the country. So clearly showing that there is a disposition, as it were, for those two occurrences, fatalities and abductions, to occur in the northern half. Now, when we broke that down between the three geopolitical regions in the north, we discovered that in the north central and northwest, from January to March, there were more incidents in those locations. But then from April up until June, we saw more incidents happening in the northwest. Now, perhaps in the course of the conversation, we can look at why those variations, as it were, in those figures.
Well, because it's a full report. I mean, what I find interesting and a point of convergence in your report and what the government said today is that there is a spate, an increase in kidnapping, and they think that it's a source of financing criminal gangs. But Mr. Roy, let me bring you into this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight. When the government says there are resolutions to stop mining and to stop the use and distribution of motorcycles, to cut the money tap or to turn off the money tap for these criminal gangs, what do you make of that?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Kabiru, for joining us from Abuja. Now, you see, we keep going around in circles, and I think it's very irrelevant. You remember that we closed the border at a point because of terrorism and influx of light arms and foreigners. The other time again, we shut down Twitter because of the use of Twitter. Then we came back again, we shut down communication lines all communication lines, some part of Kaduna and some parts in the north. And we don't know what we achieved with that, you know. And now we are talking about the mines. Let me tell you something about the mines. We have discussed with the government on many forums. So many people have come online to talk about this same thing. And I've spoken about it in Arise and so many other channels, that the mines are and business executive angle for the country. We need a lot of business executive angles from tourism, from our mining, from our oil and gas, from our agriculture. We are shut down the farms. The farmers cannot go to farm anymore. Now we want to shut down the mines. We could put those mines under the care of private security contractors. We could. Private security organizations in Nigeria have been speaking with the government to try to enhance the opportunities of screening, validation, accreditation, and approvals for private security companies to take up such responsibility, man those spaces and disable those opportunities of bandits. But it's not done. Then if you look at the banning the bikes from a national, they rose up from a National Security Council. What a joke. And you know, you ban the bikes nationwide. Now, even in Lagos, where we ban the bike, where are the monitors to ensure they obey the instruction? Then if you look at some of the parts of Nigeria, we have places where you can only go with camels. We have places you can only go with horses, with your foot, with a bicycle, and with a motorcycle. So if you ban the bikes nationwide, are you aware you didn't build roads to certain parts of the country for people to motorize to their villages, to their business places, to their fish farms, their crops farms? You know, so it's just a funny decision that was taken.
But
right, let me come bring it to...
I just have a follow-up to that, because
okay.
The Minister of Justice did say there's no sacrifice that is too great. The economic consequences that may, follow this decision whenever it comes to light. Remember that there are still deliberations. He says there's no sacrifice too great.
Yes, the minister that was speaking, sometime back he spoke again that he has a list of sponsors of terrorism. And it's on air. You can Google that he has a list of individuals and corporate bodies. Now, what has happened since he has all the apparatus of the judicial process, the criminal justice process on that issue? Then if you also look at the sacrifices that he's talking about. Now, when you make sacrifices, what are the reward system? All the areas where Nigerians have made sacrifices, it has increased the opportunity of Nigerians to go into criminality. Now, in Kaduna, a lot of the Ansaru have taken positions to protect communities against bandits. Can you imagine? And these same communities that are being protected, they are using this overriding nature to now conscript Nigerians into their terrorist gangs. So if you say no condition, no sacrifice is too grave, what are the reward lines? What did you plan to do to reward these persons? Remember, during the COVID-19, Nigerians were scrambling over palliatives that were kept out of reach. So during the COVID-19, globally, people were getting stipends from their government. So it increased our criminal nature, increased opportunity for criminality, and further pushed the youths into criminality. Now remember, ASU is still on strike. Now if you are rising up from that kind of international national security fora, and you are saying you are doing this, then what about the multitude of youths who are not in schools, who are not in universities? Have you thought of that?
Good point there, Roy Devia. We'll put you on hold, and Dr. Kabir Adamu, do stay with us, both of you. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation on the prevailing security situation in Nigeria. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Newsnight, and our guest tonight talking security, how to approach it, Dr. Kabir Adamu, and Roy Ohidevie is with us in our Lagos studio. Let me pose the same question to you, Dr. Adamu, on the issue of, when government continually says, we know the source of financing for these terrorists. What do you make of that? And secondly, the national counterterrorism strategy of government and terrorism prevention, strategy. What exactly has become of these two, strategies to, address the issue of terrorism? How effective is it that we're looking for new measures?
Thank you very much, Ngozi. A brilliant question. In my opinion, we can't be beaten around the bush. We've got a framework as provided by the National Counterterrorism Strategy. We've got a Terrorism Prevention Act. Everything we do around fighting terrorism should be within these two documents that were provided. While one provides the strategy, the other one provides the law. And so anything outside of these two, I would say, is a knee-jerk reaction. So considering, for instance, limiting access to motorbikes in certain locations, which to an extent is outside the strategy and the law, I would say it's a knee-jerk reaction. Instead of that, and why we have a Ministry of, I think, Communication and Digital Economy, right. Why don't we task that ministry to come up with perhaps an app or a platform to register and monitor the movement of bikes that we have within the country? That for me would be probably a more feasible way. So incorporating technology into the implementation of security functions, I think it's perhaps something we need to consider.
And speaking of technology, the Kuje attacks, last year in 2021, there were 8 prison breaks, prison attacks in Nigeria. And then when you add the one that happened in Kuje, that's about 9 or so, and maybe other ones that we're not even able to, pen down. The issue of technology, it's shocking that Kuje prison has no CCTV, something as basic as that. What does that tell you in, the political will to actually deal with this thing, a death blow on terrorism?
I think we are near what I would describe as a perfect storm in Nigeria, the worst type. To an extent, the political will is there. This administration signed into law a new Correctional Services Act, and well documented, has provisions for the 4 layers of security, which would have included technology. And as far as I know, the National Assembly has provided for the implementation of those aspects. What is missing is the monitoring and evaluation. Why haven't we implemented the provisions of that new law? That for me would be perhaps the beginning step. Why do we have beautiful strategies, laws, policies, documents, and yet no implementation? The key is in monitoring and evaluation, and perhaps that's the way to go. The other function is accountability. Failures like that need to be punished. And I know the Minister of Interior spoke about that today, but I think it's a little bit late. By now, there should have been some level of, even if it's just suspension, clearly some persons within that system dropped the ball. And that is why what happened. None of them has been suspended. So again, accountability needs to come in. And then lastly, I think we need to increase the funding for that sector. But again, that has its consequence. You cannot use a basket, as it were, because there are leakages within the system. We all know that leakages. So block those leakages through M&E and then hopefully increase funding.
And Roy, I mean, to you, when you hear these measures, it would seem as if the Nigerian government is limiting the source of funding for terrorism to just within the borders of Nigeria, where you hear kidnapping for ransom and mining. Is that the case? When you look at what we have, we've had the criminal gangs bring in sophisticated weapons, and that's why they're able to get away with Kuje attack. And so the funding, I think basically my question is the funding for terrorism in Nigeria within the borders of Nigeria alone?
Well, let me give a lot of respect to Beacons and the reports that they used to send. But I will not fail to mention that in all of those reports and profiling all the attacks and the recorded successes, there is no time where I have seen any report shared in Nigeria that will capture consequences. I have not seen where it will show how many was sentenced to death, how many was hanged, how many was electrocuted. I've never seen. So let's leave that aside. Let's go forward to your comment, your question. Now, if you look at the funding for weaponry, now, remember that there are so many petitions against the former service chiefs. And today, all of them are ambassadors. they cannot be touched by the law, you know. And the current people that are on that seat, who is going to probe them when you don't even know who has compromised what? Now, in all the complaints from soldiers, where you have seen viral videos going round, nobody has called those soldiers to come and really identify what they are saying. The cases just go through the court martial, and just recently we heard that a large number of soldiers were being sent away from the military, fully trained, combat ready, combat tested soldiers within the age brackets of readiness, and they were just sent out of the military that they refused to fight without weapons. Now, who has the willpower to look into all of these issues and bring judicial prudence? Who has the willpower to balance the understanding that yes, we have the monies, we have the assets as a globally respected country with territorial integrity, but we also have Nigerians too, placed in high-profile places in foreign nations, to be able to liaise for us to assess. We just got the Tucano, and all the brouhaha about the Tucano. What have we achieved? Let me tell you something. There are a lot of bad blood going on in the military. There are a lot of senior officers that have lost their opportunities because some juniors are promoted. There are a lot of them that are constricted into a kind of charade. There are a lot of soldiers that are working because they don't know where to go after the military. They are looking at the veterans. So many senior officers are hoping to get a national appointment, because when you come out, what is there for the veterans? The veterans are still crying for 24 months over arrears of minimum wage increase. They are still asking for their debarment allowance. A debarment allowance that you're supposed to pay so he does not use his skill against the state. And these are the people you want to buy weapons for. You must put your weapons in the hands of a fully motivated, capable and intelligent and deployed personnel. So if you look at all other agencies, we have the same crisis. So it's not the weapons.
I apologize to interrupt there, Roy, but we are almost out of time. I just wanted Kabir to also make a comment on my question. Are we limiting terrorism financing to Nigerian borders? Because in your report, you talked about the effect of the Russian-Ukraine war, the supply chain disruptions, and a hike in commodity prices affecting security.
Thank you. Terrorism financing is well documented, and incidentally, part of the reason why we amended the Terrorism Prevention Act is to align our local laws to international laws. Though we know that ECOWAS, as an example, if I remember last year, did submit a report that was well covered by the media, where they spoke about terrorism financing, illicit funding, organized crime, and name them, and as well as contributions from organizations that perhaps may be affiliated to terrorist groups. So the key is in monitoring the movement of funds across our borders, making sure, for instance, I mean, think about it. We've got the cashless policy in banks, and I think the idea is for individuals 5 million, and then for corporate organizations 10 million. But do we actually pay attention to that? What is the role of the NFIU, Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, in all of that? How many times do you collect money from abroad, and nobody really bothers to find out what is the source of that money, what is the purpose for which that money? Try sending $10,000 US dollars outside the Nigerian shores and see the kind of checks. So, but locally we don't have all of that. So terrorism financing is well documented, but unfortunately we are not doing enough to block the loopholes through which terrorists finance their operations. Yeah,
apparently terrorists are able to finance their operations, but the security forces that need to fight terrorism to a standstill are having a challenge in terms of getting the adequate funding. We'll have to leave it there, both of you gentlemen. Thank you so much, Dr. Kabir Adamu, Beacon Consulting, and Roy Ohidevie for joining us.
Thank you.